Here we have a formula, quite a complex looking formula, and some values. And we've got to work out what h is. Now there's two techniques we can employ to solve these questions. The first method is probably the most common, where we simply substitute in the values, simplify what we can, and then solve it. The other method is to change the subject first, and we looked at that in a previous lesson, so you may be familiar with that, in which case we can then substitute and calculate it quite quickly. So let's look at the first method, and then we'll have a look at the second method. Let's substitute and solve. So let's put down the rule. So it's pi times radius squared times h all over the number 3. Now they tell us that v is 100, so where the v is, we'll put the number 100. Pi times, they tell us the radius is 4, so we go 4 squared, times height over 3. So let's go ahead and start solving this. Now there's a couple of calculations we can easily do. For example, 4 squared is the number 16. And we could actually, in fact, work out all of this bit and turn that into a single decimal sort of value. But we might just look at what we would do if we didn't do that step. Okay, so I'll change the 4 squared to at least 16. That's a very easy one to do. And let's go ahead and solve that. Now in solving for h, we need h to be on the top, which it is, but it has to have all the other values moved to the other side in the correct order. Okay, now h is being times by 16 and times by pi and divided by 3. That's the way the order of operations would probably work. So we need to get rid of the divide 3 first by timesing it to the other side. So I'll do that and just rub it out. It's gone now. Let's get rid of the pi. Now that pi is timesing. So when it moves to the other side, it'll become a divide, and we show that by writing it on the bottom part of the fraction. So the pi is now gone. And we'll do the same thing with the 16. It's timesing. So to get rid of that 16, it will go to the bottom and be written like this. And there'll be a time sign there, although we often don't need that when we're dealing with the number pi. So we've got that h is equal to that calculation. Some people prefer to swap it around, and I might do that here. So put the h first. So we got 3 times 100 over pi times 16. That's what we've got to calculate to work out what pi is. So I'll grab a calculator now, and we'll key that one in. So we've got 3 times 100, well, let's get the fraction key going, 3 times 100 on the top, and on the bottom is pi times 16. We'll give our answer as a decimal. So 5.968. Might as well keep it at 3 decimal places here. And any units, we don't have any units in the question, so we'll just have that number there. But often this might have centimeters or meters, because this is the rule for the volume of a pyramid, and h would be the height of that pyramid. But that's our answer there. Now the second method is to change the subject first, then substitute it in. So let's write that rule out again. So pi times r squared times h over 3. Now we want to solve for h, so we want to make h the subject. So let's leave the h where it is, and in a similar fashion to solving, we're going to shift all the other values to the other side. So reversing that order of operations again, we're timesing by the r squared, timesing by the pi, dividing by the 3. So we times 3 to the other side. We then divide by the pi and divide by the r squared. So we write that on the bottom like that to show the r squared is dividing that side and timesing the pi as we do it. So that the r squared is gone, we're left with h. h is now the subject of the formula. So let's switch it around in the way we're familiar with. And we can now substitute in the values they told us for v and for r. Now you'll see that in the end we're doing exactly the same thing as we did above. When we key that into our calculator, we're going to get the same answer. So it's really a matter of preference about which technique you use. Sometimes the questions will actually say change the subject first and then go on to calculate what the h is, in which case you're better off using this second method. But if all they're doing is asking you to find h, the first method is probably the best way to go.